guys. Welcome to another edition of the Sitdown Show. I'm going to
I'm good, man. How's everything? I'm happy to be back. So,
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. How are you, Christian?
I'm good. I'm dealing with some wisdom teeth surgery, so it's kind of
Yeah, I
not.
was gonna say, how you feeling?
All four of mine were taken out. They were all impacted, so that's worst case scenario. But we gotta watch the Euros yesterday. That was fun to watch, and we're gonna be able to talk about that for the next month. So the next couple shows will be heavily related to that. So very excited for that.
Absolutely, absolutely. I'm excited as well. And as a man, Christian and I were talking yesterday. I was saying I care more about Italy than the U.S. men's national team, and Christian was a little upset about that. But speaking of which, Italy gets a nice 3-0 win against Turkey last night or last afternoon, depending on how you want to say it. They look great. They got an Demiral own goal, a Mobile goal, and what was the other guy?
Insigne.
Yeah. So I thought it was overall a good performance. I thought the Insigne goal covered up a little bit of his performance because I wasn't a huge fan of his performance overall. But I mean, hey, get the 3-0 wins. First time Italy's ever scored 3 in the Euros. How about that? What were you guys' opinions on the game? We'll start with you, Max.
So yeah, I think the better team ended up winning that game. You could just tell from the way that they were playing, even in the first half. Even though Turkey didn't concede any goals, you could see that Italy, controlled the game from possession. They created a ton of chances in the box, but Turkey was defensively sound. Obviously, that wasn't the case in the second half. As you mentioned, the first goal was an own goal. First time in the history of the tournament that the first goal scored in the tournament was an own goal. So that's kind of unfortunate. But yeah, after that, the Turkish defense completely went to shambles, and Italy, scored two pretty solid pretty solid goals. My takeaway from the game is, like I said, the better team won, but I think the biggest concern for Italy going into the latter stages of the tournament, because I expect them to get out of this group. Obviously, we've seen in the past that 3 points is enough to guarantee a spot out of the group sometimes. So I think it's safe to say that Italy is going to be out of the group already. My biggest concern is creativity in the midfield. I think they have a lot of stability there, and they have a lot of guys that are good on the ball. I just don't know if they have enough guys that are good creating chances. And once they get that ball into the final third and give it to their forwards, I'm concerned that their forwards have a tendency to overthink. We saw Immobile yesterday. Yes, Immobile, I think, is one of the more underrated players in the world. We know that, if he has a good shot on goal, he's going to tend to score. But I feel like he doubts himself a lot. Maybe that's a confidence thing because, going into that game, he hadn't scored in his last 3 or 4 international appearances. So maybe having scored this first game helps him get that confidence to regain his goal scoring form for Italy, like we've seen he's done on the club level. But I think it's a mixture of lack of creativity in the midfield and also the forwards kind of thinking twice before taking chances. And maybe it was just an overreaction to yesterday's game, which they ultimately ended up leading or winning 3-0. But still, I think that has to be a concern for Italy and that's a team that has very little concerns. But if I had to nitpick, that's what I would do. And quickly to talk about Turkey, I think they kind of shot themselves in the foot. Yes, Italy, like I said, was a better team, but if they were a little bit more defensively stable, I think they could have limited it to they could even got a point out of that game. They could have lost maybe 1-0 instead of 3-0. And I think the person to blame yesterday, ironically enough, is not Demiral, who conceded the own goal. It's really Kaglar Siyuncu, the lesser defender. He just played horrible. His clearances, led to the ball getting intercepted into the final third on their half by the Italians. And a lot of he just looked like he doubted himself. Maybe the lights were a little too bright for him since it was the first game of the tournament. I expect him to be better, but I think he had a terrible game, to be frank, yesterday. So I think the Turkish national team, they shouldn't overthink it. I think they still have the quality to get past this group. I just think they need to be a little bit more defensively stable and maybe work on their tactics a little bit because I think on the ball they weren't good enough. And yes, they played against class opposition, but they need to revisit their tactics and they need to be they have to be more defensively sound.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I said yesterday I expected Italy to come out and play really well, especially at home. First game of the tournament, it made a lot of sense for them to come out and win 3-0. But yeah, I completely agree with you. I think their midfield, and it'll be interesting to see because Marco Verratti, the PSG midfielder, is expected to be back. I don't know if he'll play in their second match, but certainly could play in their third. But either way, getting him back will be huge. I would assume Locatelli, who played on the left of that midfield three, would be the guy that gets taken out of the starting 11. Jorginho's had a very successful season with Chelsea, and I think Barella from Inter Milan is one of the superstars that could come out of this team going forward. He's been great for Inter. Could get even a bigger move, considering that Inter may start selling some of their players to get more money. Hence why we see Ashraf Hakimi, who could be on the way out. But that's besides the point. I mean, their midfield three is very good. But I think, besides your concerns, Max, which I like the points you brought up, I actually think one of their concerns may be that Giovanni Donnarumma could actually not get a lot of action in the group stages because, Turkey, I believed, was the second best team. I know Joe believes Wales will be the team that finishes second in the group. And even Switzerland, I don't think any of those teams really provides a lot of attacking danger, especially when you have a veteran defense like Chiellini and Bonucci as your back two. Donnarumma won't get too much action in the group stages. So when you go up against a team for, say, like Belgium, or maybe, I don't know who else they could potentially play in the round of 16, those teams are going to be more dangerous. So besides that, though, I completely agree with you. I think Italy is a dark horse in this tournament. I think everybody can agree on that. I think when you have that veteran defense, you also have a great midfield. And, Joe talked about it before we got on the show. I think Insigne had a underperforming game. I think, he's shown that he can, get into those pockets in the middle, especially with his ability to dribble inside and create chances. He did miss a couple, but then again, he did get the goal. So that's the most important thing. But, I'm interested to see if Mancini decides to bring Chiesa into the starting lineup at some point. I think, Berardi on the right from Sassuolo looked pretty good. Obviously, he got the goal that, came off Demiral. But I think Chiesa's been, one of Juventus's 3 or 4 best players this season. So it would be interesting to see if he, maybe gets a start in the second game. But overall, I think, my perception of Italy doesn't change. I think they are a dark horse still. I think, the biggest thing is can Immobile really perform and be near the top in terms of goal scorers in this tournament. I think he certainly can be. He's shown it for Lazio. It's just a matter of confidence and ability to take his chances when he gets them. For Turkey, though, yeah, I completely agree. I think the biggest thing I saw throughout the game is they didn't get enough of Çalhanoğlu. I think he's the one guy in terms of their front five, I would say, that doesn't, he's the one that has the ability to really create the game and control the game with his play on the ball. I think we saw from him at AC Milan these last couple seasons. He's been a really important player for them. And when you get him on the ball, he has the ability to spring passes to everybody. And they didn't get enough out of Yilmaz up front. I think this season we saw so much from him in terms of his ability to score goals for Lille. And that's why they were able to win Ligue 1, which is a crazy feat considering how much money PSG has been able to spend over the last decade or so and how dominant they've been in that division. But Yilmaz didn't get enough up front. He was kind of he wasn't too sure about how to play because honestly, he either was going to try to link up play and come a little deeper, or he was going to try to hold up play. And really neither were effective. And credit to the Italian defense because they were just not giving Turkey any chances. But I'm also not concerned. I completely agree with Max, especially with the third place rule, which if anybody in our current viewers doesn't know, 4 of the 4 top third place teams also get out of their groups. So that certainly leaves more room for error in terms of Turkey. And I completely agree with you. I think Turkey shouldn't be too worried. I mean, Switzerland and Wales, who are currently playing right now, are not 2 sides that I'd be too worried about. I think they both could certainly beat Turkey. But I think Turkey still are comfortably enough going to get out of this group, whether it's in second or third.
I think that Turkey's biggest problem is their offense. They didn't have anything going for them at all. And it was insanely bad, their offense. They had 2 shots the entire game, I think it was, and one of them was at the end of the game when it was already 3-0, and it was just to preserve a clean sheet that they made the save. It wasn't even a good shot. There was no offense for Turkey. They were sitting back like it was a peak Jose Mourinho team, but there was no counterattack either. It was literally, what it was like to be. I would say I would attribute to how Turkey played that game like a team that's on a penalty kill in hockey. They would sit back, and boom, a ball would go over. They just clear it away. So I'm not really that that impressed by Turkey at all. I thought defensively they were all right, but there could have been 2 or 3 penalties given in that game that wasn't given. So overall, this could have been closer to a 5-0 game than a 3-0 game. I mean, Chiellini and Bonucci in the back is interesting because they're old. I was kind of always concerned about them, but they look good. But again, Turkey offensively, I don't know how many goals they're going to get in this group stage. Maybe 3, 4 max, because that they didn't show anything to me that said they're a threatening team. I mean, we all knew they were going to be a defensive team, but even defensively, they didn't look that good. And this is for an Italian team that doesn't have a true goal scorer. Goal scoring wise, they're all right. Don't get me wrong, but they don't have a consistent goal scorer. Ciro Immobile is great, is a good player, but he hasn't consistently scored for the national team. Insigne has always been kind of very, very meh for the national team. So that's the one thing I'm concerned about going into the future of this tournament is how will that perform? I'm not really worried about Donnarumma and the defense. I'm more worried about can they get a consistent goal scorer, because that's what you need in the Euros. You need someone like in 2012 with Italy. Mario Balotelli took over. That's how they got to the final that year, because they had a consistent goal scorer. I don't know if they have that this year, and that's my one concern for them. So moving on, let's talk about the game that's going on right now, Switzerland versus Wales. As Michael Daly has updated us that Switzerland just scored. Shout out my friend Michael Daly, great guy. Make sure you guys tune into there. He has a show going on later today previewing the fight, so make sure you tune into that at 1. But what are you guys' opinions of this game? See, I was of the opinion that I thought Wales would probably come out on top. I like their offense a little bit more than I like Switzerland, but Switzerland's up 1-0. What do you guys think?
I think the way that the game has been flowing, at least in the first half, which I watched, Switzerland looked a lot better on the ball. They controlled possession. They in turn controlled the pace of the game. Now, Wales was defensively sound enough to stop any sort of half chances from turning into real chances, I guess. And then, as we just heard, Briel Embolo, who is a player that I frankly don't rate that high, just scored after literally a few minutes ago before we started saying, I told you guys how little I rate Briel Embolo. So talk about a jinx.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I personally think Switzerland's the better team. And I think that's the only reason I say that is because I just don't, besides Gareth Bale, and they have a couple other players who I think are quality, I just don't see Wales being a consistent team, especially when Bale is not at his best, which, Bale really, Joe will say as a Spurs fan that, especially during the later stretch of the season, I think he was better, and he was important in that game.
This year, he averaged like a goal per game. He was actually insane.
Yeah, the number. I think the numbers look good, but I think personally the eye test, it doesn't, scream. I think back to his best, but I think the biggest guy for Switzerland is Xherdan Shaqiri in that pocket, in that 10 role behind Seferovic and Embolo, and I think. He hasn't played big minutes at Liverpool, but when he does, typically he could be a decent creator. I don't think he's, world class or anything like that, but he's definitely a player who can, especially against inferior competition and competition that's not, to the level of Italy, certainly can create space, create chances for these guys. And I know Joe isn't a big guy on expected goals XG, but currently it's 1.48 in favor of Switzerland and 0.13 for Wales. So that's pretty significant. 15 shots for Switzerland at the moment, 2 for Wales. I would assume that Switzerland can, continue to keep this up and probably win the game today. But like I said, I don't love the group besides Italy. I think anybody could finish second, anybody could finish third, and anybody could finish fourth. So it really could go either way for me. I think Switzerland could win this game. Wales could certainly get the equalizer, but, I think Switzerland as of right now would be my third place team, but it could really go either way.
Yeah, I think I kind of agree with that. Wales is underperforming in my opinion. So, I guess they're not coming out going second. I guess Switzerland over Turkey then. I don't really know, man. All I know from this group is Italy was coming out on top.
Other than that,
it's kind of a toss-up.
Definitely.
I think the rest of the teams kind of suck. Not gonna lie.
I still think Turkey has much more quality on if they play at their best, I think they can get the better of Switzerland or Wales, no questions asked.
That's fair. That's
The
definitely
goal, by the way, and I just saw it on Twitter, it came off a corner. So Shaqiri, who's known for his ability to, bring in good crosses, it was a left-footed cross, and Embolo got his head on it. So that's how it was scored.
So moving on, we're going to go talk about the Belgium versus Russia game later today. And I would like to start off by saying I think Belgium is extremely overrated. I don't think they're going that far this year. I think they're going to win their group, and I think they're going to fall when they run into the what is known as the Italian Stallions. They're gonna. That's when their run comes to an end. I think they're gonna. They have too many. All right, this is partially a joke, partially true. They have too many Spurs and former Spurs players on their team, and they're not gonna be able to get it done. And I'll touch on that a little bit later. But Max and Christian, I'd like to hear what you guys think of this game and just Belgium in general first.
Well, my biggest question mark for Belgium, and I feel like it's a pretty obvious one. I actually have two. The first one is De Bruyne's health. Obviously, we know he sustained a pretty bad knock against Chelsea in the Champions League final. He had to get some surgery to repair. I don't know if it was an eye or something in his face. He had to do some little surgery, so he's going to be playing this tournament with a mask, ironically enough, because he got hurt by Rudiger's mask. So my question is he going to be playing today? Frankly, I think even if he doesn't play, I expect the quality of Belgium to get the better of Russia here. Now, I think it's important to note that I believe this game in Russia? I think this game might be in Russia.
It is in Russia, I believe.
So that could help Russia if De Bruyne's not there, but I still expect Belgium's quality to win in this game. But so my question mark obviously is De Bruyne's health. We know the quality he brings when he's on the pitch and how much he transforms that Belgium team. He's pretty much the core piece of that team. And then also my second question is how good is Eden Hazard going to play? We've seen how injuries have derailed his career for the past 2 years since he's moved from Chelsea to Madrid. Can he regain that form or that former form he had back when he was at Chelsea, similar to how he played, say, in the 2018 World Cup for Belgium, or anywhere near that? Because I think even if he's at 75% close to that, this Belgium team can go very far. He's very, very important. I don't think he's as important as De Bruyne, to be honest, but I do think he's critical to their chances of going far and possibly winning this tournament. So those are my two question marks. To answer your question about the game, like I said, I think they should be able to beat Russia. Maybe the home crowd is a little bit of a factor, but I still think their quality, even without De Bruyne, is good enough to beat Russia. And like Joe said, I think they should win their group. I don't know if they're going to win the tournament. I think they're going to go far, but that potential Italy-Belgium game is going to be very, very interesting.
I'm going to make sure I'm going to call in sick on work that day. When that happens, I'm not going to work. I'm watching that game.
But yeah, no, I allude to a lot of what Max said. I think Belgium, depending on how far they get in, and I think Italy-Belgium would be a fantastic game. I think Romelu Lukaku is certainly capable of winning the Golden Boot at this tournament. I think he plays in Group B that has Denmark, Finland, and Russia. That almost feels like three teams that are just going to really struggle to really contain him, especially the way he's played this season. I think he's been a top 5 striker in the world, and that's incredible because Lewandowski broke the record in Germany. Harry Kane was great this season in the Premier League, doing both the scoring and the assisting for his teammates. The list goes on, and Lukaku's right up there, helped Inter win that Serie A title. So I think, I completely agree with Max though. I think Kevin De Bruyne's injury is really important because he didn't have his best season, but obviously we know what he's capable of. And Hazard, 75% of him would get them into a chance where they could certainly make a deep run. I just don't know if I even see him getting to that level. I think it's going to really come down to Roberto Martinez's tactics and how he sets him up to play, because honestly, Zinedine Zidane didn't use him well even when he did play. And he just really hasn't looked comfortable at Real Madrid throughout 2 seasons. And that's really concerning. I think a lot of people think he's going to eventually get back to the level he showed at Chelsea. I'm not too sure until he leaves Real Madrid. And I just don't know if I can really guarantee him doing it for Belgium. So that really just relies on other guys like Lukaku. And the one concern for this team is definitely the defense. I think they're very old. You're relying on Jan Vertonghen, Toby Alderweireld. You have, I think, Thomas Vermaelen.
They're not good. They're
Yeah,
not good
I think
footballers
Thomas
anymore.
Vermaelen, who plays in I think Japan at the moment, is still in that team. That former Barcelona player. So defensively, they're really suspect, I would say. But when you have Lukaku, you have Kevin De Bruyne. Certainly, I don't see much from Hazard, but then again, he is certainly capable of coming up with the performance. Maybe some good performances against the likes of Finland, Denmark, and Russia would help. And that's certainly possible because those three teams are not going to touch Belgium. I think Belgium will go on and to win 3 games, and that'll start today, even though they're playing in Russia, in St. Petersburg. I think they'll still take care of business. But in terms of them, getting deeper into the tournament, it comes down to De Bruyne's health and Hazard's form. And I think I'm more concerned about Hazard. I think Kevin De Bruyne, if he's got the mask on, and rightfully so. I mean, he had the facial fractures. I think it was pretty significant. I think he can still do what he's always done for Man City, and that's perform at an extremely high level. Hazard, though, I until I see it, over the course of 2 or 3 games, I'm not going to tell you I believe in it. So, in terms of getting out of the group and winning today, they'll definitely win the group. They'll win today, but in terms of a deep run, I think Italy is a team that could certainly stop them.
I'm going to tell you this right now. The Hazard that we should be worried about is not Eden, it's Thorgan. Thorgan Hazard is the guy we should be worried about, all right? Because this Eden guy, he's too busy eating. He's too busy in Spain doing whatever he's doing over there. He's not serious anymore. He's not serious anymore. He went to Real Madrid and decided I'm going to go sunbathe all day. I'm telling you, he's from Belgium. He's not used to all that sun. He's getting a little bit too. He's having too much fun on the beach. When he was in England, the weather was similar to what it is in Belgium. He was grinding. He's not grinding over there anymore. That's gonna be the problem. Also, like I said earlier, their defense very unserious. Toby Alderweireld and Jan Vertonghen are unserious footballers. They are not good anymore. 2 years ago in the World Cup, they were good. Now they're horrendous. They are not good at all. I'd rather Toby Alderweireld is closer to Eric Dyer than he is to say a Harry Maguire. Okay, he's not. He's like I'll take Chiellini over Alderweireld and Vertonghen at this point in their careers. So yeah, I'm not. They don't concern me. Lukaku's great, but he's going to need service. I think that De Bruyne had a good season, but I mean, I think it's being a little bit overrated because of the season he had before. He didn't deserve to win PFA Player of the Year. Not even close. He wasn't. Bruno was better than him. Harry Kane was better than him.
Ruben Diaz was better than him too.
Who?
Ruben Diaz was better than him too. I believe.
Exactly. He won the name. I don't know how he won that award. I'm not going to lie. But
I'm not gonna lie. Even as a City fan, I was kind of shocked. But I mean, I was happy. But I thought Ruben Diaz was 100% gonna win it.
Yeah, I just think this Belgium team they're like number 1 in the world rankings, and I just don't see it. I think they're older. I think this is their last chance with their golden generation, and they didn't win anything. They pulled a Tottenham. They legitimately pulled a Tottenham. They didn't win anything with their golden generation. It's kind of sad when you think about it, but I mean, what Jake says down here, Hazard is very critical to Belgium's success, but betting on him to play well is a losing bet right now based on his last 2 seasons is absolutely correct. Eden Hazard has not shown anything that he's going to get back to his best. And I don't know why we just expect it to happen on the international stage just because he's playing with a different team. You're on bad form. He can't string together 3 games. He's always in and out of the lineup. Why are we assuming he's going to be healthy for this whole Euros? I just don't see it. I think they're overrated. I do think they win the group. I do think they beat Russia. They're not a bad team, and I do agree with you, Christian, that Lukaku could win Golden Boot. But I'm concerned about I'm concerned about him getting distribution and getting the ball. Because I guess De Bruyne is a great player, don't get me wrong, but I feel like we're overrating him a little bit right now. I don't think he's going to be putting in this monster shift where he's just going to be the best player on the pitch every single time. I really don't. I think there's ways to shut him down. And I don't think the rest of this Belgium team is as good as what it used to be, where you can't just key in on De Bruyne. I think you really don't have to worry too much about Eden Hazard anymore. You can really focus in on De Bruyne and Lukaku and shut those 2 down. And then, I don't trust their defense at all. So I'm just not that big on Belgium at all. So moving on, let's talk about the England and Croatia. That's going to be interesting. I'm Now let's go for you, Max.
I actually have a bold prediction here. I think Croatia is going to get the better of England this first game. And yes, I know a lot of people are pointing to the fact that Croatia's, golden generation, which we saw peaked in the 2018 World Cup. Obviously, they made it to the final. They are, they have an aging midfielder. Their best player, Luka Modric, 35 years old. He's had kind of an up and down season. You can see that regression. Obviously, Mandzukic is kind of out of the fold. Kovacic can't consistently get on the pitch. So there's a lot of question marks with Croatia because a lot of those players that were once great are starting to slow down. But I just think there's a lot of issues with England that are not being talked about. As we know, Harry Maguire is not fit to play this game. So the question mark is you have John Stones, who's going to start 100%. But even as a City fan, as much as I like John Stones, I don't know if I like him as a primary center back in a center back duel and a back. Well, I don't know if they're going to be playing a back three. That's another question, but I'm going to get into that. I don't like him being the primary center back option for any team. Even if it's him and Tyrone Mings, who I rate pretty highly, I still don't know how successful that's going to be against a team like Croatia that is going to get chances and that has that big game experience, especially against England, obviously. So I just think also I'm going to bring up what I was alluding to with regard to the system. We don't know if they're going to be playing a back three or back four. We don't know what their system is going to look like. So are they going to be having, Stones as the central center back and then have something like, Kyle Walker as your right center back and then possibly, I don't know, there's rumors that Luke Shaw might be the left center back, even though I think that's very far-fetched. Even if you have a back three of Stones, Mings, and Walker, how successful is that? I really don't rate that. I don't think that back three would be very successful. And obviously there's a lot of question marks with regard to the direction that Gareth Southgate, the England manager, will take in making the attack. So obviously Harry Kane is untouchable. He's going to start every game. Who is he going to have beside Harry Kane? Is he going to have Sterling and Sancho? Is he going to have Rashford and Sterling? Is he going to have, Jack Grealish and Phil Foden out in the attack, right? So there's a lot of question marks there. The fact that we don't know that, that we don't really know what his starting 11 may look like week in and week out, or I guess every game, that to me can be kind of a negative, even though he has a lot of quality. And we know with his tactics, he's very much defensive. He doesn't really care much for possession. He cares more about attacking on the counter and playing a safer brand of soccer. But the issue I have with that is when you have this much quality in the midfield, you have Foden, you have Mason Mount, you have Jack Grealish, you have Declan Rice, Calvin Phillips. This is a quality midfield that is capable of creating chances. If you allowed them to play on the ball, I don't think you're going to suffer. If anything, I think you're going to fulfill England's potential, which we know is to win this tournament. They can win this tournament. They have the talent to do it. The only reason why I don't see them winning the tournament is because I don't think their manager is good enough to let them do that. I don't think their manager is going to help them fulfill their potential in achieving that because his tactics are so backwards for a team with that much quality. And look, I think the biggest question mark is do they finish first in their group? I think they certainly are the best team in that group, but I don't know if they will finish first in the group because I think they might have, if they were to finish first in the group, they would have to play the second place team in the group of death, which would mean either one of France, Germany, or Portugal in the next round. I don't really know if England really want to do that. I think they might deliberately, lose this first game to Croatia, maybe win the rest of the games in the group enough to finish second in the group because I expect Croatia to do well with the rest of the group as well, and maybe secure that spot or secure that game against the team that is in the group of death, that is a more beatable opponent. Now, the downside to that is if they were to win the group, they'd be playing at least an additional game at Wembley, which would be an additional home game, which could really help England. But I don't know if they'd be willing to sacrifice playing a team in the group of death to have that home game. That's the biggest question mark for me. I don't know if they will be. I expect them to finish second in the group, even though I think they're the better team. I don't think Gareth Southgate's the guy to get it done. I think his tactics are backwards for that team. In the 2018 World Cup, it made a lot of sense because there's question marks with regard to the attack and the quality in the midfield. And obviously there's a lot of instability in the defense. So back then, and obviously he made it to the semifinals. So there is a lot of success with those tactics. But now that you have this injection of quality, of youth, especially in the midfield, I don't know why he would revert to those tactics, but I'm not gonna spew any more about it. But I do think Croatia is gonna get the better of England in this game.
Yeah, I mean, I think everybody's questioning Gareth Southgate at the moment. I think, even before we get talking about today or the game against Croatia, I think, we even can go back to the decision to take Trent Alexander-Arnold. I think as a Liverpool fan, I mean, I have the poster right there. You probably can't see, but that would be him. I mean, Trent's a great player, a great, attacking fullback, but if I want to be, upfront with you as our viewers, he should not have been taken to the tournament. They have too many right backs. And honestly, they were going if Max is correct and they do try to play with 3 center backs and 2 wing backs, Trent has never played in a 5-back formation where he's the wing back. He plays as an attacking right back in a 4. So he's never used to playing as, a right wing back, an actual right wing back, even though he technically plays like one. He's not actually played that position. So, that's the interesting part because, he already has Kieran Trippier, who's shown he could perform at the World Cup. He's had a great season. I didn't think he actually had one, but apparently a lot of people have talked about him having a very good and effective season at Atletico Madrid. You obviously have Reece James, who's been effective for Chelsea, who's won the Champions League. And you have Kyle Walker as well. So those are 3, guys who are willing to play right back, who are, great at their position. And then he decides to take him instead of, James Ward-Prowse, who I think was always the right decision here. I think they needed a ball playing, center mid in that heart of the midfield who can also be a great set piece taker. And he is certainly that. So, that's the question mark with me. I completely agree with Max. I think in terms of England, getting a deep run in this tournament, I think they'll get out of their group, whether it's first or second or even third if they were to struggle without Harry Maguire. I think the biggest question is how are they going to face off against, these big teams like Portugal, Germany, I mean, even France if they get a chance to play them. I think those are the question marks because, even if they play a 3-back or they even play with a normal back 4, I think whoever he plays in terms of their attacking talent is good enough to beat, teams like Scotland. I think Czech Republic are a pretty dangerous third-place team here. I think Thomas Souček is great. I mean, I will sing his praises because he has been great for West Ham. You have Patrick Schick up front who plays for Leverkusen and was great for Leipzig as well. I mean, you have Soufal who also plays for West Ham. So there's a fair amount of good players for the Czech Republic. And Scotland who, has some great players in Kieran Tierney, Andrew Robertson. You have a couple really good players for them. I mean, John McGinn in the midfield will certainly provide a lot of high work rate there, but I just don't see them being better than England or Croatia. It's funny because a lot of people have talked about Croatia as a team that could, even finish 4th in this group. I think people are really overrating the amount of age they have in that squad. I think they still will have enough quality to figure it out. In terms of the game with England and Croatia, I think the Maguire miss will certainly be a big issue, and I completely agree with you, Max. I think that actually would be why this ends in a result that doesn't favor England. I'm going to go with a 2-2 draw. I just think England still will be able to figure it out offensively. I think Harry Kane's been great. I mean, who they start alongside him will be an interesting thing. I think Foden should be started on whether they want to play him on the left or the right. I think, then the other spot is very interesting, but I will see it'll be a guarantee. It seems like it'll be a guarantee that Mason Mount gets a start, whether it's in the front 3 or the midfield 3, wherever Southgate plays him. But I'll go with the 2-2 draw, but yes, completely agree with Max. The questions will continue to mount against Southgate. And if they don't get a deep run, I mean, I don't think they'll, sack him in terms of going into World Cup qualifying and World Cup next year. But he definitely needs to be questioned if they can't make a deep run with this team.
Yeah, so here's my issue with England's squad, and it's Southgate primarily because he doesn't know how to set up his team. I feel like I would set up the England team better than he does because he's playing 5 in the back with a team that should be playing a 4-2-3-1. First off, I just don't understand the 5 in the back type of setup when you have great creators that you could set up in a 4-2-3-1. They should be setting up with 4 in the back: Harry Maguire, John Stones, Ben Chilwell, and Kyle Walker. Then a midfield 3 of Declan Rice, Mason Mount, and Jackie Grealish. And then you go on the wings, you go 2 midfielders on the side, Harry Kane up top, and then they should go Rashford and Foden. That's the way they should set up. It'd be a great way to control possession and to progress that way. But instead, you're playing 5 in the back, trying to spam crosses into a team that isn't really. I mean, other than Harry Kane and Harry Maguire, there's not really that much of a heading great headers on the team. I just don't understand what Southgate does, and that's exactly why I don't rate England at all. Like I literally said, I don't know if you saw the show, Max, but last week, but I said if England wins the Euros, I have to buy an Arsenal jersey and wear it on the show. I'm just that confident that England's not going to do it. The team is all right. I'm worried about the Harry Maguire injury because if he's not there, I was talking on another show about John Stones. Is he that good, or is he like Trent Alexander-Arnold, where he was exposed this year because Virgil van Dijk was his cover?
I think the good comparison with Stones before I'll let you go again is Joe Gomez. I think it's the same thing. I think he looked so good alongside Virgil van Dijk, but then when you put him on his own, he shows some more weakness. And I think that's the same thing with him. I think Ruben Diaz did the same thing to Stones. I think he made him look like
100%.
And that's the question mark. But go ahead, Joe.
And Harry Maguire, I think Harry Maguire is a great center back. I think I love the jokes people get off on him, but overall, it's just because he cost 80 million, and he's playing like he's like the second best center back in England right now. Obviously, Virgil van Dijk being injured, I'm not counting him. But overall, I think that this team with Harry Maguire, I don't know how healthy he's going to be. I really don't know how healthy he's going to be, and I think that really scares me for England because I don't really rate Trent at all as a defender. I mean, he could get up, but he's more of a midfielder to me than a defender. I mean, I rate Declan Rice as a DM, but I also think he's a slightly overrated as well by English fans. So I think defensively they have problems that they're going to be focused on, and I don't think Southgate's that good. I think that 2018 World Cup is also a little overrated, that run they had. They played cupcakes all the way through. It was a Mickey Mouse run until they faced Croatia where they lost. So not a very serious team, in my opinion. Southgate's going to screw it up, and I won't have to buy an Arsenal jersey. So, I mean, moving on, let's talk about a transfer. No, actually, no. Scratch that. We're going to get to that last. Group of death before we forget. Christian, who do you think is going to come out of the group of death, your top three?
So I'm leaning towards France and then Portugal, with them finishing as the second place team, and third would be Germany. I think you could certainly flip-flop Portugal and Germany if they can get, if Joachim Low can figure it out. I think France are a lock to get through as the team in first. I think almost everybody seems to be taking them as the team that's going to not only get through the group but win the tournament as a whole. I mean, if you look, I tweeted about it a couple of days ago. I mean, if you look at their under 21s, that team might be able to get out of this group. That's how good, France as a whole has in terms of their talent. But I mean, the list goes on. They have so many good players and so many, they have depth at every single position. So, I mean, I think that team is a lock to finish first in this group. But I mean, I think a lot of people are questioning Portugal only because, it's team selection really is what it's going to come down to, because, I mean, in terms of the front three, Ronaldo's going to be a lock, but then, I mean, do you play Diego Jota? Do you play Andre Silva, who's been fantastic for Eintracht Frankfurt? I mean, João Felix hasn't had the best season, but we know what he's certainly capable of. I mean, you have Bernardo Silva. So there is a lot of different players that have question marks in terms of who's going to play in that front three. I mean, Bruno Fernandes is going to constantly show up. You have Renato Sanchez. So I think in terms of talent, I would put them right up there in terms of with France. I think they are that good. In terms of a starting 11, I think, they are probably, in terms of talent, in terms of the entire, Euros, I think they're probably 2 or 3, and just in terms of how good their entire squad is. And then Germany, of course, the question marks come to their front three in terms of who's going to score and who does he start in terms of Joachim Low. I think Timo Werner, has been questioned all season long. And then again, he did, provide a lot of assists in terms of his Premier League form. But then again, he doesn't, score when he gets his chances. And that's the question mark. I honestly think they should go with Kai Havertz up front as the number 9. He's been much better, especially throughout the second half of the season. Obviously got the 1 goal in the Champions League final. But, you probably start him with maybe Leroy Sané and Serge Gnabry, he has the number. If you look at Serge Gnabry's numbers for Germany, they're ridiculous. They're some of the best numbers we've seen over the course of the last, 2 or 3 years. He's I think, scoring at a really high rate. I don't know the exact number, but I mean, their midfield is still very good. I mean, they have Joshua Kimmich, who's been a great 6. Also can play as a right back as well. You have Leon Goretzka. There's a team that's still very talented. Obviously, the disappointment at the 2018 World Cup still hinders over this team, but they certainly can do what they've always done, and that's perform at major competitions. So I think they will just finish slightly behind Portugal, but like I said earlier, with the 4th, 3rd place teams, they'll get out of it. A deep run for them is certainly in question, but I think France, I guarantee, will make the deep run. Portugal and Germany, I'm not so sure about, but that is a group of death, and for our viewers, that is the group to watch for sure. I mean, anything could certainly happen. I think Germany are certainly capable of figuring it out and finishing second, but as of right now, I would lean towards Portugal finishing second.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think France has to be the favorite for a reason. Obviously, they just came off of a dominating, frankly, World Cup winning performance 2 years ago. And I just think if I had to choose, my prediction for the group would be France. I agree with Christian. France, Portugal, Germany, Hungary. Poor Hungary for being landed in that group. But here's my bold prediction with this group. Even though I think France should win the group and they should go far in this tournament, I think Portugal might be the team that's the most talented in the world right now. Because I think the biggest thing for France is, yes, they have an incredible attack. Their defense, I don't rate their defense as highly as other people do. Yes, Varane and Kimpembe sounds good on paper, even Varane and Longley, if you want to suggest that instead. But there's a lot of question marks with those players. Varane has had a very up and down year. And I think you could even say towards the latter half of last season, going into this past season, he's had a very questionable year, especially without that having, Sergio Ramos right there with him. Him as a primary center back isn't the best. Kimpembe has had a very good year, to be fair, for PSG, but I just don't know how high his ceiling really is, especially being a potential center back pairing with Varane. I don't know if he'll be better than Umtiti was, back in 2018, and obviously when he peaked in the 2016 Euros for France. I don't know if he'll be much better than Umtiti was, because that's hard to replicate. Obviously, Umtiti scored the winner in the semifinals to take France to the World Cup final in 2018, but obviously his career has fallen off a cliff, unfortunately. And even Longley, I feel like he's probably a little more solid option than Kimpembe for France, but he's been up and down for Barcelona, and frankly, the whole Barcelona team has been up and down. He's a victim of that. But the thing with Portugal is Portugal has in my opinion, a far better midfield than France. I think Pogba is past his prime. I don't think Pogba is a very, very good soccer player anymore, to be honest with you. I look at the way he's been playing for United. Sure, I expect him to play better for France, but you could even look to his performances in the Europa League final, games against, that Leicester game in the FA Cup. You could just see the way he played towards the latter half of the season for United. And frankly, I think the entire year. He's just not good on the ball anymore. He's not good at winning the ball. His distribution is questionable. He makes terrible decisions on the pitch. I think the best player in that midfield undoubtedly for France is N'Golo Kante, and I don't think there's a player on Portugal that can replicate that as a defense.
The best player in that midfield is Paul Pogba.
I disagree. I think it's N'Golo Kante.
Yeah, I agree with Max.
He's on great form, but Paul Pogba is the best player in that midfield.
I think he's past that. I don't think he's at that form anymore. I don't think he'll reach that form. I think he'll be better than he was for United because he tends to play better for France, but I still think N'Golo Kante is the best player in that midfield three. But look at the potential options for Portugal in their midfield. Just for sake of argument, you have Bernardo on the left, Bruno Fernandes on the right, and then Renato Sanchez as a holding midfielder. I'll take that midfield trio over anything France can offer, to be honest with you. Those are more informed players. Renato Sanchez, even though he's had an up and down career since he won the Young Player of the Tournament for the 2016 Euros, we've seen he's regained form now. He just won a league title with Lille. I think he's a pretty solid defensive holding midfielder in a midfield trio. Obviously, we know what Bernardo Silva can do, and we know what Bruno Fernandes can do. I think Bruno Fernandes is undoubtedly a top 10, if not higher rated player in the world right now. And then you have an attacking three of Ronaldo in the middle, Diogo Jota, who I think is going to be a really scary player this tournament. And obviously you have João Felix, who we know that when he plays at his best, inconsistency has been a question for him, but we know when he's at his best, he's world class. But I think Diogo Jota, not to get sidetracked too much, I think Diogo Jota is going to have a very special tournament. I think he can be the reason why Portugal can end up winning this tournament. Yes, Ronaldo is incredible, but I'm saying he can be that X factor, Diogo Jota. Overall, as a team, I'm going to take Portugal's quality over France. I think France has the potential to go farther, but that's only if Portugal gets stuck in a tough game, say against an England at Wembley. That's going to be a tough game for Portugal. I think their quality will see them through. And I think the only way Portugal doesn't win this tournament is if they play France in the final, because France is going to want to enact their revenge for their loss in the 2016 Euro final between Portugal and France, obviously. But if Portugal plays, I'll tell you right now, I'll make this prediction right now on this show. If Portugal plays any team other than France in the final, I'm going to take them to win 100%. I think they have too much quality to be beat by anybody else. I think the only reason why they'd lose to France is because France would enact that revenge in the final. They have that extra drive. But I'm going to take Portugal. I rate Portugal very, very, very highly. And I expect them to be very dangerous in this tournament.
Oh, I want to touch on France. All right, first of all, I'm going to give my group of death standings and top three because we know Hungary isn't coming out of that group. It's France 1, Portugal 2, Germany 3. Germany's going to be dangerous. I think they're veteran. The fact that they're experienced and have a lot of veterans on their team is going to be helpful. But I think that the quality of Portugal and France is going to put them across and get the first two spots. France, I would like to touch on. Jake said Paul Pogba was the most skilled player on the French team. Conte is the most effective, and I agree with this. Conte is a great player, don't get me wrong, but he's also dealing with insane PR right now. I mean, I don't think he's the best DM in the world. I think Kimmich is better, and I think Casemiro is better. Paul Pogba has the ability to change games, and I don't think Conte can do that. Conte could shut people down. Paul Pogba could change games. I really truly think he's the best player on the French team. I think the Karim Benzema addition to France brings a lot to the table for the French team that I don't think they had before. I think they can really do a lot with that. So first off, I think he's gonna be able to distribute more on the wings for Dembele and Mbappe. He can kind of sit back a little bit and give them nice passes. Because we know Benzema, not only is he a great scorer, he can pass the ball pretty well too. I think he's better at it than Griezmann. I think Griezmann, I don't really rate Griezmann that much. Ever since he went to Barca, he doesn't do much for me. People say he's a great player. I don't really see it. No.
Yeah, but if he plays, say, as a 10 shirt for France, I think he could be incredibly effective.
Possibly. I can see that. But either way, I think he can be effective. I don't know. I just don't really rate Griezmann that much. I think the Benzema addition makes this team scary. Other than that, I truly do think they're the best team. They have a great goalkeeper in Hugo Lloris. They have great defense and midfield. I don't think anyone's touching the midfield in the world. I really don't. They have one of the best box-to-box midfielders in the world in Pogba. They have one of the best DMs in the world in Conte, although I don't think he is the best. I think he's one of the best, and I really don't think that's a debate. Portugal, I think, is a great team as well. I think they have the ability to do a lot. I think they have Ruben Diaz on the back end, which is insane because we saw how good he was this year. They have Cristiano Ronaldo, who defies age. I mean, we could argue he had a down year this year, but he still put up insane numbers. Bruno Fernandes is one of the best players He could distribute. Imagine him distributing to Diogo Jota, João Felix, Cristiano Ronaldo. It's insane. It's just not fair. I think they're coming in second in the group, and I agree with Max. I think they get into the final. I think it's going to be a France versus Portugal final. Personally, I do think France edges it out, but overall, I think those are the two best teams in the tournament. And I really don't think it's close. And before we close out here on the TWSN Soccer Sit-Down show, let's talk about some transfer talk. And I want to talk first about Jadon Sancho going to United. And maybe we'll touch on two people, maybe only one because we're running low on time here. But Sancho is very close to joining United. However, this is something we hear every summer. I think I'm going to write an article about Manchester United's transfer window soon because I have a something I want to get off my chest about what they need to do with the striker situation. But what do we think about Sancho to United? Do we think it's going to happen finally this year? One, and two, is this going to be something that, or do you think it's not going to happen? And do you think this helps the team a lot?
I think it has to happen. I don't think there's a debate about that. I think now that there's a situation where the fans want the owners out of the club, I think that's actually going to incentivize the owners to make this transfer happen and possible other major moves happen. So I would say now that this whole thing with the owners have happened, it's a lot more likely that this transfer of Sancho does happen than before, where they're disputing on dollar amounts or pound amounts, whatever it is. So yeah, to answer your question, I do think it will happen, and I think this makes their team far better than it is now, because I think the biggest question mark for United obviously is their stability out in the back. Obviously, we know how good Harry Maguire is, but he doesn't have that other center back to help him. I don't think Lindelof is good enough. Obviously, I don't think Eric Bailly is good enough. And Tuan Zabi, I don't even know why he's at Manchester United, to be honest with you. So I think they need to address that. But aside from maybe defensive stability and possibly a defensive midfielder to help their defense as a whole, I agree with Joe. What you're alluding to, I do think they need help on the on the striker department. But I think, and this is kind of a bold tactical move that I have, and I'm curious to hear what you guys have to say about it. I personally would put Greenwood at number 9 and have Sancho as your right winger with Rashford at the left. I think that solves your issues, because I think the issue with Greenwood out wide is I think he's a decent distributor of the ball, but I think his game is suited to be a number 9. He's incredibly clinical in the final third. We know that's where he's strongest at. So I think if you put him out in the middle, have Sancho out wide, delivering the ball into him, giving him those opportunities. We know Rashford is great out wide, cutting in as an inverted winger and helping create chances. And we know that Rashford is one of the better strikers in the league when he's fully healthy. I think fitness was a big question for him this year. I think this can take them to real title contention. Again, getting Sancho and possibly a DM and a center back can really take him into title contention. But yes, I think bringing in Sancho is the first step to doing that. And I think that would allow them to put Greenwood at number 9. And I think that would solve their striker issue. But I'm curious to hear what you have to say about it.
Yeah, I think, honestly, if we look at Jadon Sancho, I think people underestimate how good he is. I think people almost take it for granted because, honestly, when you look at Dortmund and you think of Dortmund, you always think of Erling Haaland and you think of, how he's a generational talent, and he is. But Jadon Sancho is very, very good as well. I think people don't really understand. And, people definitely don't watch the Bundesliga as much as – and it doesn't get as much attention as, for, say, the Premier League. But, he has been great for Dortmund over the last 2 seasons. He's really shown a maturity to really be that, goal scorer. He can be a goal scorer from the wing. He's also a very good creator. I think he does a lot of different things that really could help United. And that in terms of their front four, that's the real one missing piece I think they don't have. I don't think they have a true, right winger, and I think he can certainly be that. In terms of Greenwood, I do like that point. I think, during lockdown, he showed even when he was playing as a right winger, he could still be effective, and that's just because he was in such good form. But when he's not in the best of form, you put him on the right wing and he gets taken out, 60, 70 minutes into the game, and you really don't talk about him because he hasn't been effective. And yeah, he is a true number 9. I think that's where he's best suited to play. It does certainly help that Cavani is going to be there for another season. So you can mix and match those. I think Martial either A, leaves, or 2, just doesn't play. One of the two, I think. I personally, and I've said it about 5 or 6 times, it seems like over the last couple of weeks, I was one of those guys who felt like he could take it to the next level. Did not do it this season. So yeah, I think Martial either A, leaves the club for some sum of a fee. I don't know what they could get for him. He's still young, so somebody could soup him up for, a fair amount of money, but I think he honestly should leave the club at this point. I just don't see him playing over Greenwood or Cavani at this point. But yes, I think a DM is certainly the next most important thing is, along with the center back, I think, Declan Rice would be my guy to take. And I just wrote an article, if you would like to check it out. It's for West Ham, and I think they need to retain him. And certainly getting, Europa League football maybe will keep him there for another season. I don't know who they are linked with in terms of a center back, but, I think, Victor Lindelof hasn't been quality. I think Eric Bailly's injury concerns continue to be a problem. And Harry Maguire, like Joe mentioned earlier in the show, is, I think he's only considered overrated because of the price tag. I think if he was bought for less money, I think people would think of him as a top three center back when Virgil's healthy in the Premier League. But because he was bought for 80 million, people think, well, that's not, really what he's worth. But yeah, he's been great. So I think, those are the three biggest issues in terms of, challenging for a title. I think if you could resolve all three of those issues, they are definitely closing the gap on Manchester City. I think Liverpool are right there as well, fully healthy with Virgil van Dijk and Joe Gomez. So that's my three teams in terms of teams that could really challenge. Obviously, Chelsea's right there as well. So really four, which is what we thought going this season. I believe four teams could have challenged this season, but obviously we really didn't get any challengers to Manchester City. So yeah, I think those are the three biggest issues with Manchester United. I think Sancho will get done. Like Max mentioned before, I think the onslaught of criticism towards their ownership is going to force them to really, for once, finally make those moves that are desperately needed. And Sancho would certainly resolve one of their problems. But if they can fix both the six and a center back as well, yeah, this team is definitely going to be within striking distance of a title this season.
This man, Christian the Block, was spitting facts. All right, he basically just stole my entire thunder from me. As I'm throwing right my article on. Go for Sancho. He's one of the reasons Haaland is so good. We saw when Sancho hasn't played, Haaland sometimes drops some stinkers. This man is a creative menace. Mason Greenwood should be playing the 9 next year. There's no reason to go out and get Harry Kane. Let Greenwood cook. Let him cook. Let Martial play a little bit too. Cavani, I think they're going to bring him back. I mean, there's no reason to get this huge fee for Kane when Greenwood is a year or two away from being a star striker in the world. He's right there. He's such a good player. I don't see a reason for this team to go out and get a big striker. Maybe I was thinking last night, right before I was going to bed, when I was brainstorming ideas for an article. Maybe you go get a rental striker, like not like a Zlatan, but like who would be a good rental striker?
I mean, they have that now in Cavani.
Yeah, I think Cavani suits that perfectly.
Yeah, I mean that's exactly. There's no one else. I don't really see who you would take right now for that. Maybe Weghorst, I could see. Maybe they want to get
Danny Ings. Danny
Ings wouldn't be a bad idea either. Maybe if you just want to. I mean, I don't really know because I'm very high on Greenwood. I think he's going to be a star, and Declan Rice needs to go to United as well. Obviously, I said earlier, I think Rice is a bit overrated, but he's still a class player. He helps that team a lot because then you don't have to play Pogba on the wing. There's no reason to play. Pogba needs to be playing in the middle of the park. I don't know why they started playing him on the wing at some point this season. I don't know what they're doing because they wanted to go with McFred in the midfield. That was stupid. Get Declan Rice there, play Bruno as the 10, and Pogba as the 8 box-to-box midfielder, and let Declan sit back and cook. And then get another center back in there somehow. I don't really know who yet. I have to do a little bit of research into that, but get another center back or something. And even that, I don't know if you necessarily need to do that. But overall, this team is set up perfectly to be great. I think they really do have a chance to be contending for a Premier League title within the next 3 years, especially if Greenwood develops the way I think he will. There's no reason to go out and spend for Harry Kane, spend on other places to buff up the rest of your team because Greenwood's going to be a star and you're not going to need Harry Kane in a few years. He's getting older anyway. And that's not me just being biased because I wanted to stay at Spurs. The team that Harry Kane should go to is either City or Real Madrid. United just doesn't make sense to me. Doesn't really fit either way. Obviously, I have my opinions on Ole, but the United team has a chance to go far soon. But overall, thank you guys for tuning in. We'll be back next week at some point. I mean, with work and life right now, our times of the show is getting all over the place. But overall, thank you guys for tuning in. For Joe Camrota, Christian DeBlock, Max Romero, we are signing off of the TWSN Soccer Sit-Down Show right now.